The police officer, driven by prejudice, failed to see Agent Danielle Brooks, forcing her to stop. Seeing a black woman who didn't belong here, dragged from the car, taunted and assaulted, Danielle remained silent until her FBI badge fell to the ground. What happened next stunned everyone. Subscribe now to follow stories like Danielle's, where justice meets resistance and truth breaks the silence. All Danielle Brooks wanted was to go home, to be safe. A tall white officer, Henderson, didn't say hello, didn't ask if she was okay. I just barked. License and registration. Danielle complied, slowly and carefully. She spoke politely. She didn't flinch, but his eyes burned into her. "What are you doing here?" he barked. "You don't belong in this town." She said she was just passing through, but he leaned close to her window. "You're lying," he said. "You think you can drive through here like you own it? Get out of the car." "No," she said softly. "I didn't do anything wrong." He gritted his teeth. Henderson yanked the door open and grabbed her arms. Danielle tried to fight, to stand, but he was stronger. He shoved her against the car. Her shoulders ached. Her breathing came in short gasps, clouding the air. Henderson saw it. He loosened his grip. His eyes widened. "Are you FBI?" he whispered, his voice full of disbelief and fear. Danielle didn't answer right away. She stared at him, wet and shaking, holding her badge with slow, steady hands. "Yes," she said, "and you're going to regret what you just did." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "I don't know," he stammered. "You didn't say anything." "You didn't ask," she said coldly. But even after the truth was out, Danielle didn't feel safe. Not safe. "I was just doing my job," he muttered. "No," Danielle said. "Your job is to protect people, not to terrorize them." And when she turned away, she wasn't just walking away from Henderson. She was walking toward something else. She was going to report him. The next day, the report hit the police department like a thunderbolt. Henderson's name was trending for all the wrong reasons. The body camera footage didn't lie. Neither did the bruise on Danielle's arm. The suspension was swift, but so was the backlash. Danielle sat in her living room that night, and the storm had passed. Her clothes were dry, but her heart was still heavy. If you've ever been silenced, profiled, or mistreated, know this. You're not alone, and we're not powerless. We will not be quiet anymore. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Support Danielle. Support the truth. And never stop fighting for justice. She drove to the local FBI field office that morning to file the report. Her hand trembled as she signed her statement, but her voice was clear, steady, when she described everything. The sirens, the rain, the accusations, the force, the bruises. Danielle's name leaked online within 24 hours. Comments flooded her social media. She baited him. She pulled the race card. Another angry black woman playing victim. The worst ones found her family. Her mother received voicemails threatening to expose what she was. Her brother received pictures of nooses. And Danielle received an unmarked envelope at her apartment with a single message. "You'll regret this." The internal investigation dragged on. The woman they once dismissed was now being called in for interviews, forced to repeatedly recount the same painful night. Some agents treated her with respect. Others didn't even bother to hide their doubts. One white male supervisor asked if she'd maybe misunderstood the officer's intentions. What another questioned why she didn't reveal her badge sooner. "You know how that looks, Agent Brooks." "I know exactly how it looks," she said, "because I've lived it." Meanwhile, the department suspended Henderson with pay. His lawyer gave a press conference, calling Danielle's report an overreaction to a stressful misunderstanding. He said Henderson had dedicated his life to protecting the community and had no history of racist behavior. Danielle wanted to scream, but she stayed silent. She saved her voice for the hearing. As she left the Bureau's building, someone had slashed her tires. On the windshield, written in thick black marker, were the words, "Traitor." And when she reported it, the officer on duty asked if she had any personal enemies. She almost laughed. She had one, and he wore a badge. Danielle began seeing a therapist after her supervisor quietly suggested it. Danielle walked into that room, every eye watching her like she was the one on trial. Henderson sat across the room, cleaned up and quiet, his expression unreadable. His lawyer argued that Danielle had been aggressive, that she had refused to comply, that she escalated the encounter. Danielle sat still as they dissected her like evidence, her tone, her posture, her delay in showing ID. Everything was fair game. Not once did they ask why Henderson's first instinct was to yank open her car door and drag her into the rain. But she spoke. She told the truth. Not just the facts, but the feeling, the helplessness, the fury, the sting of being invisible in the eyes of someone who was supposed to serve and protect. Her voice didn't tremble. Her hands didn't shake. And when she looked Henderson in the eyes and said, "You didn't see an agent. You saw a black woman, and that was enough for you to decide I was dangerous." There was silence. A heavy, uncomfortable silence, the kind that truth always leaves behind. The review board promised a decision within 2 weeks, and those 2 weeks were hell. They reassigned Danielle to desk duty. They stopped inviting her to case briefings. Some colleagues stopped making eye contact. Others whispered just a little too loudly in hallways. One day, she found a sticky note on her computer that read, "Watch your back." HR opened an investigation, but nothing came of it. She went home one night to find her apartment door slightly ajar. Inside, no one took anything, but someone had moved her badge, just enough for her to notice. The message was clear. Someone was watching her. Still, she didn't stop. She documented everything. The threats, the slashed tires, the whispers. She emailed her supervisors. She called her union rep. And each time she ended her message the same way. "They've tried before. It didn't work then. It won't work now." The board finally made its decision. Henderson was fired, not just suspended, but terminated. The footage, the report, her testimony. It was enough. Barely. But it was enough. Danielle accepted a transfer to a new city, where she joined a task force on civil rights violations in law enforcement. Her days were long. Even now, she still wakes from dreams soaked in rain, still checks her locks 3 times before bed, still avoids driving through small towns alone at night. The fear didn't vanish. It became part of her, but so did the fire. And she tells her story. In classrooms, in meetings, in videos like this one. So if you're listening, if you've ever felt unseen, unheard, unsafe, Danielle's story is for you. Her pain, courage, and fight aren't just hers. It's ours. So please, if her story moved you, subscribe, comment, and share if you believe in what she stood for. Let others hear her voice, because the only way to fight injustice is to face it together. It's ours. So please, if her story moved you, subscribe, comment, and share if you believe in what she stood for. Let others hear her voice, because the only way to fight injustice is to face it together. Danielle Brooks gave a talk at a high school in her new city. Students, teachers, and parents filled the auditorium. Standing at the microphone, her heart raced, not from nerves, but from the weight of what she was about to share. She wasn't just telling a story. "They dragged me out of my car, but," she said, her voice steady but low. "Shoved against metal, drenched in rain. Not because I broke the law, but because someone looked at me and saw a threat." The room was silent. I had to prove I was worthy of respect by pulling out a badge. But the truth is, I should never have needed it. Respect, safety, dignity shouldn't come with a condition. Afterward, students lined up to hug, thank, and cry with her. A young girl whispered, "I want to be like you someday." And Danielle smiled, but the ache in her chest deepened. She didn't want that girl to be like her. She wanted her to be free. And still, the challenges came. The trolls came back. They didn't deny Danielle's truth. They reshaped it to fit their lie. They mocked her pain and sold it as entertainment, laughed like it was comedy. Someone sent her an email titled, "You're the problem." She didn't respond. She just saved it in a folder called Evidence, because she had learned, you don't fight fire with silence. You fight it with light. And so here she is, talking to you. You right now are reading this, listening and watching. You, the person who may feel what she felt. Who did they watch, judge, and silence? Or maybe you've never experienced it, but you care. You want to help. You believe people like Danielle matter. If that's you, press the like button right now. It's not just a click, it's a message. It says, "Danielle, we see you. We believe you. We stand with you. Because this world tried to break her, and she's still standing. She still wakes up at 6 a.m. to chase justice. Still wears her badge, not because it protects her, but because she refuses to let it be a symbol of fear. She's not just a federal agent. She's a woman who fought to make her voice heard when the system tried to silence her. And she's still fighting, not just for herself, but for everyone who's ever felt invisible in their own country. So don't just scroll past this story. Don't just shake your head and say, "That's awful." Do something. Feel something. Share something. And please, like this video to support Danielle Brooks, to tell her she's not alone, to say thank you for your courage. This reminds her that even in the darkest storm, she is not alone in the rain. Because the more we lift voices like hers, the harder it becomes for anyone to silence them again. They said Danielle Brooks disappeared for a while after the hearing, after the threats, after the headlines. One day, she was on national television, celebrated as the FBI agent who stood up to a racist cop. The next, gone. No social media updates, no interviews, just silence. People wondered if the pressure had broken her. Suppose the threats had driven her into hiding, but the truth was stranger than anyone could imagine. Danielle didn't run away. She went underground. Not in fear, but in pursuit. She had discovered something buried inside Henderson's disciplinary file that wasn't supposed to be there. A redacted name. A pattern of suppressed reports. Multiple officers, all tied to the same small town, all involved in misconduct incidents with black residents. But none of those cases had ever seen the light of day. It wasn't just about Henderson. It was bigger, dirtier, and Danielle couldn't let it go. So she did what no one expected. She took a leave of absence from the bureau, bought a burner phone, changed her number, and started driving across the country, quietly retracing the paths of those cases. She posed as a journalist, as a university researcher, as a nonprofit worker. She knocked on doors in forgotten neighborhoods, spoke to families who'd stopped trusting anyone in uniform. She listened to stories that had been buried and forgotten, names erased, evidence destroyed, And every time she got close to something, a warning would follow. Mysterious calls, shadowy figures near her motel, her car searched without leaving a trace behind. But Danielle didn't stop. One night, deep in rural Mississippi, she was chased off the road by a black SUV with tinted windows. She barely made it to a gas station. Another time, in Georgia, someone left a dead crow on the windshield of her rental car. The message was clear: turn back. But she didn't. She collected documents, testimonies, and broken police reports, building something piece by piece. A map, a timeline, a hidden network. What began with Henderson was just the surface. Underneath, it was a rot that ran deeper than she ever imagined. She started mailing encrypted USB drives to trusted contacts, lawyers, journalists. She sent one to a senator, another to a civil rights organization. But she never attached her name. She didn't want the spotlight. She wanted results. And then, one day, she just reappeared. She returned to the bureau with a binder full of names and a fire in her eyes. No one knew where she'd been. No one could explain how she got the files she had. But what she uncovered blew the doors off a multi-state cover-up involving planted evidence, illegal surveillance, and an internal protection ring shielding officers from accountability. At the center of it all? A former deputy chief turned state advisor, someone who'd helped bury every complaint tied to that town. When Danielle testified before the oversight committee, she didn't flinch. She laid it all bare. The late-night threats, the staged evidence, the patterns, the silence, and most of all, the names. Real people whose voices the system had drowned out for years. Her voice didn't tremble once. She ended her testimony with a single sentence that would go viral within the hour. They ordered me to stop asking questions, so I dug deeper. Since then, people have called her many things: hero, whistleblower, trouble. But to the communities she helped expose, she's something else entirely. Hope, proof that one woman with enough courage can crack a system built on silence. But what she did came at a cost. Danielle still gets followed. She still receives encrypted messages telling her to drop it. Some people want her gone. People who would do anything to silence her again. And that's where you come in. If you're still listening to this story, comment below to support Danielle. Let her know she's not crazy. She's not alone. The world is watching and standing with her. Because the fight she's carrying isn't over yet. Not even close. Not yet. And when it is, the world will know exactly why. And she needs to hear from you. Drop a comment to say, "Keep going, Danielle." She's done the unthinkable. She's risked everything. And she's still fighting. For justice. For truth. For all of us. There was a time when Danielle Brooks thought her badge would be enough. Enough to keep her safe. Enough to speak louder than the color of her skin. Enough to stop the assumptions before they became threats. But that night in the rain, when Officer Henderson dragged her from her car, slammed her into metal, and looked at her not as a federal agent but as something less than human, everything changed. And it wasn't just that night. It was the years that came before it. The stares, the questions. The slow walk of security guards behind her in department stores, the random checks at airports, the neighbors who never smiled. The trainers assumed she was there on a scholarship, the colleagues who spoke over her in meetings, the systems that smiled in her face, but bristled at her presence. That night just made it visible to everyone else. When she sat in the dark afterward, soaked to the bone and shaking, Danielle didn't cry because she was hurt. She cried because for the first time in a long time, she was afraid that all her years of work, all her late nights and sacrifices, all her pride in being an agent, it still couldn't shield her from racism. It still couldn't save her from being seen as less. But she didn't let that fear consume her. Instead, She fought back with everything she had. When the body cam footage surfaced and Henderson faced suspension, people thought that was the end, that justice had finally been delivered. But Danielle knew better. She knew that real justice doesn't end with one man's punishment. Real justice means changing the system that allows that man to believe he can get away with it in the first place. And so, she kept going. Quietly. Relentlessly. She took a risk no one saw coming. She left her comfort, security, and career trajectory and looked for the truth. Not just for herself, but for everyone who's never had the chance to speak up. She tracked down families whose cases were never investigated. She combed through abandoned complaint files, dug through digital archives, and connected dots never meant to be connected. And when the threats started again, when someone tried to force her off the road late at night, when her apartment was broken into and her badge left on the floor like a warning, she didn't flinch. She documented everything. She built a case, not just against Henderson, against a system of silence and corruption that stretched across counties and crossed state lines. When she returned to the bureau with evidence in hand, no one expected it. No one expected her to have traced misconduct to senior officials, to uncover a hidden trail of buried complaints, to expose a protection ring that had cost innocent people their freedom, and in some cases, their lives. But she did. And when she testified before the Oversight Committee, her words cut through the room like lightning. "You didn't just try to silence me," she said, her voice shaking only once. "You tried to erase me, but I'm still here, and now everyone knows." It was more than a victory. It was a reckoning. And yet, Danielle doesn't call herself a hero. She never wanted fame, never sought praise. She just wanted to be heard, to be believed, to know that all the pain, the risk, the trauma, it meant something. Today, she keeps a photo in her wallet. It's not from her family. It was on the dashboard of her car the night Henderson stopped her. The rain, the lights, the silence. A reminder of where she started and how far she's come. So if you're here, if you've followed her journey from the night she was profiled to the moment she risked everything for justice, then this is the moment to stand with her. Press the like button right now to support Danielle. Not just for surviving, but for fighting, for rising. To remind the world that a Black woman with courage is one of the most potent forces on earth. Let her story live on, not just in memory, but in change. Comment below if her journey moved you. Share this with someone who needs to believe that truth can win. And never forget, Danielle didn't just survive discrimination. She turned it into her greatest weapon and used it to rewrite the ending. Even after Danielle Brooks stood before the Oversight Committee and exposed the truth, after she risked her career, her safety, and her peace to tear down the shield of silence surrounding police abuse, her battles didn't end. They only grew more painful. The victory that played out on the news, that earned her praise and headlines, was not the kind that came without scars. Behind every bold step she took, some moments broke it in ways no one could see. When the investigations Danielle launched began leading to indictments, internal officers turned cold. Agents who once shared coffee with her now averted their eyes. The emails she sent for resources went unanswered. When she walked into the field office, the air felt heavy. The hallway chatter died when she passed. Even her new supervisors, though outwardly polite, found ways to box her into silence, assigning her to back office reviews instead of active duty. She had become too visible, too controversial, too honest. One morning, Danielle found her locker at work vandalized. A sticker pasted across the front read, "Rat." Someone had scratched the words underneath it. "You think you're special." She stood there in silence, the hallway empty, her hands trembling. It wasn't just about the words. It was about what they meant. Even in the institution she had dedicated her life to, some saw her courage as betrayal. Still, she didn't stop. She kept submitting her reports, kept testifying in civil cases where her findings were used to exonerate innocent people, kept visiting communities still reeling from wrongful arrests and broken trust. She spoke at town halls, knowing her face was still on watch lists, knowing that somewhere someone was waiting for her to slip up. Every day she stepped out, she took a risk. Every day she reminded herself that silence was the more significant danger. But there were nights when the loneliness felt unbearable. She would sit alone in her apartment, scrolling through the hateful messages that still found their way to her phone. "You're an embarrassment. Traitor in a badge. Watch your back, agent." She never replied, but she read every single one. Not because she believed them, but because she needed to remember the world she was fighting to change. The hardest part wasn't the public hate. It was private isolation. Friends grew distant. Some said she'd brought the attention on herself. Others simply didn't know what to say anymore. Her mother worried every day. Her brother begged her to leave the bureau, and she thought about quitting some mornings when she woke up to the same routine, the same cold stares at work, the same fear in the pit of her stomach. She thought about disappearing, but then she'd remember. She remembered the teenage boy whose conviction was overturned because she reopened his file. The mother who cried in her arms after seeing her son walk free. The old man in Georgia who whispered, "Thank you for not forgetting us." And those moments lit a fire inside her, even when everything else tried to dim her light. One evening, she drove back to the small town where everything began. The same dark road. The same intersection where Henderson had stopped her that rainy night. She parked her car and sat there a long time, watching the traffic pass and remembering how powerless she had felt. How small. But also how that moment, that exact spot, had been the beginning of something bigger than her fear. It was the moment she stopped surviving and started resisting. Danielle Brooks didn't just fight a man that night. She fought a system. And every day since, she has carried the weight of that choice. The price has been high, mentally, emotionally, and physically. But she hasn't stopped, because if she does, who will keep the flame lit? So if you've listened this far, followed her journey from that terrifying night to the halls of justice and the lonely spaces in between, press the like button now. Not for the story, but for the woman behind it. Danielle needs to know she's not standing alone. She needs to feel your encouragement, to know her fight matters, to know her pain wasn't in vain. Leave a comment below. Say, "We stand with you, Danielle." Because her story isn't over. And your voice? It is the one that keeps her going. The night Danielle Brooks returned home after giving testimony in yet another wrongful arrest case, her hands shook as she unlocked her door. Not from fear, but from exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones, that no amount of sleep can fix. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor as she stepped inside her dim apartment, the silence swallowing her whole. No laughter, no family waiting, just the cold hum of the refrigerator and the echo of her breathing. She set her bag down and looked around. This was the cost. Fighting the system, telling the truth, and shining a light in places others preferred to keep dark, came with a price. And sometimes, it felt like she was the only one paying for it. But she didn't regret it. Not when she remembered the young man who hugged her mother after being freed from a sentence that should never have existed. Not when she saw tears in a judge's eyes as he reversed a conviction based on evidence she helped uncover. Not when she thought about the voice she had given back to people silenced for years. Still, there were days when the weight almost broke her. The Bureau had reassigned her again, this time to a role so far removed from the field that they wanted her quiet. They called it administrative reassessment. She called it exile. Her office was a windowless room in the basement, with a flickering light above her desk and a door that barely closed. Her badge no longer opened the upper-level case files she used to work on. She wasn't invited to interagency briefings. Her opinions were ignored, her suggestions brushed aside. They wanted her to fade. But Danielle Brooks wasn't made to disappear. She started writing. Quietly. In notebooks, in the margins of case files. In the silence of that dim office, she poured her pain, rage, and fire into words. And then she started sharing them. At first it was anonymous, online, on forums, and in essays. People began reading, then listening, then asking, "Who is this?" And when she finally stepped forward, she did it with the same calm strength she had shown the night Henderson tried to erase her. Danielle began speaking at universities, civil rights summits, and even community churches where mothers sat clutching pictures of their sons. And she told the truth, every time. Raw, unfiltered, painful. She told them what it felt like to be respected in the courtroom, but feared on the street. It felt like being a federal agent and still being seen as suspicious because of her skin. What it felt like to be dragged out of her car, drenched in rain, her dignity stripped away by a man with a badge and unchecked bias, and what it took to stand back up. One night, after a speech in Chicago, a woman in her 60s approached her with trembling hands. "My brother died in a holding cell," she said, voice cracking. "No one ever believed me, until you." Danielle cried that night, not from pain, but from connection, from knowing that her suffering had sparked something far more significant than herself. A movement, a reckoning, a revolution made of whispers that were finally turning into roars. But the threats didn't stop. Neither did the isolation. The more she spoke, the more resistance she faced. Her apartment was broken into again. Files were stolen. Her car was keyed with the words, "Liar." She received a letter with no return address that read, "One day you'll slip." But still, she kept going. Not because she was fearless, but because courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act anyway. Danielle knew what was at stake. She knew that some people wanted her quiet. But every time she stood behind a microphone, looked a crowd in the eye, and said, "I am not afraid of the truth," she reclaimed something stolen from so many. Power. And now she's speaking to you. Yes, you. If you've followed her story, from the rainy night of injustice, through betrayal, silence, isolation, and every act of resistance that followed, press the like button right now. Let her know her voice reached you. Let her know her pain meant something, that her words didn't vanish into a void. Comment below. Say, "We believe in you, Danielle." Say, "Thank you for fighting when others gave up." Because she's still fighting, she's still standing. And with your support, she'll keep going. Danielle Brooks is not just a survivor. She's a force. And her story, your support, can light the fire in someone else's darkness. The following day, Danielle Brooks stood at the edge of a press conference podium, staring at a crowd of reporters, flashing cameras, and rows of unfamiliar faces. Her name was trending again. But this time, not just as a federal agent or whistleblower, but as a target. Overnight, someone had leaked her personal information, her home address, her family contacts, photos from her childhood. The internet turned savage. Hate poured in by the hour. Her mother received anonymous calls telling her to control her daughter. A bullet casing was mailed to her office with a single word scribbled on a napkin. Enough. Danielle didn't flinch. She stood tall, spine straight, lips steady. When the microphones turned on, she didn't speak with anger. She didn't shout. Her voice was soft, but it carried like thunder. "I am not afraid of your threats," she said. "Your hate does not move me. Because I've already lived through the worst of it. I've already been dragged from my car. I've already had my skin treated like a weapon, and I'm still here." The crowd fell silent. "This isn't just about me anymore," she continued. "It's about every voice that's been silenced. Every mother who buried her son without answers. Every child who learned too early that the law doesn't always protect them. I'm not backing down. Not now. Not ever. Not." And when she stepped off that stage, her phone exploded. Not with hate, but with hope. Messages from strangers who said, "You gave me strength." Survivors of similar abuse who wrote, "I thought I was alone." Young girls who said, "I want to be like you." She cried in the car that night, not because she was broken, but because she knew her fight was finally reaching people who needed it most. But it didn't mean the attacks stopped. Later that week, someone tried to follow her home. A black SUV trailed her for 18 blocks. When she pulled into a police station parking lot, the vehicle sped off. She filed a report. Again. Nothing came of it. Again. That same day, she was informed her role was being reevaluated. Her access to several databases was revoked due to security concerns. And when she asked if this had anything to do with her recent speeches, the silence on the other end of the call was all she needed. Danielle didn't break. She bought a notebook titled "Truth That Terrifies Them" and began writing every detail down. Dates, times, names, patterns. She had learned the system's biggest fear wasn't disruption. It was documentation. Proof. Patterns. She made it her weapon. She launched a grassroots initiative. One city at a time, she began meeting with families who had suffered under wrongful arrests, excessive force, or silence from the system. She compiled data, testimonies, and most importantly, she listened. Because Danielle knew real change didn't start in boardrooms. It began in living rooms, broken neighborhoods, and whispered truths that were ignored for too long. One evening, while speaking at a candlelight vigil for a teenager killed in a botched traffic stop, she looked out over the crowd and saw something that struck her heart. A young girl, barely 13, clutching a poster with Danielle's photo. The words beneath it read, "She stood up, so I can too." Danielle's voice trembled when she began speaking that night. "I didn't ask for this fight," she said, "but I won't walk away from it either. Because that girl right there, she deserves better. We all do." And now she's here. Again. Speaking not to crowds or committees, but to you. If you've followed Danielle's journey, from the rainy night where she was brutalized, through the hearings, the silencing, the isolation, the threats, the resistance, and now this moment, press the like button right now. Not for the headline, not for the drama, but for the woman who refused to give up, even when the world tried to bury her voice. Leave a comment below. Say, "Keep going, Danielle." Say, "We're with you." Say, "Your truth matters." Because Danielle Brooks isn't done fighting yet. Not just for justice, but for dignity, for visibility, for everyone who ever felt invisible in their own country. Your support isn't tiny, it's everything. Press like, comment, share her story, let her know she's not walking alone, let her know that we're still listening, and that we believe in the fire that lives in her name. There's a moment that Danielle Brooks still sees when she closes her eyes. A flash of red and blue through a rain-streaked windshield, the sound of boots stomping toward her car, and the cold, stinging slam of metal against her back. That was the night everything changed. That was the moment when a respected federal agent was reduced to nothing more than a suspect because she was black. Because Officer Mark Henderson didn't see her badge. He saw her skin, and that was enough for him to decide she didn't belong. That moment, violent, humiliating, and unforgettable, wasn't just an isolated incident. It was the start of something far more profound, a descent into a darkness Danielle didn't choose, but bravely walked through. It exposed the rot inside one officer, and the silent rot in an entire system that punishes voices like hers. But what they didn't know, what Henderson didn't know, was that Danielle had survived far worse in silence. This time, she chose to speak. She risked everything, her job, safety, and peace of mind. She stood up in front of a nation that didn't always believe women who looked like her. She testified, exposed corruption, and peeled back the curtain on years of buried complaints, internal protection rings, and communities broken by silence. She didn't just blow the whistle, she screamed for those who no longer could. And it nearly destroyed her. There were days when Danielle walked through her workplace and heard the whispers, saw the sideways glances. She found the notes in her locker, the locks tampered with, and the tires slashed. She received messages telling her to stop before it's too late. Some days she came home and sat in her living room for hours, afraid to open the blinds. And yet, she never wavered. Why? Because she remembered. She remembered being 13 and watching her father get pulled over for a broken taillight, only to be handcuffed in front of her. She remembered being 17 and getting followed around a department store, her backpack searched while her white classmates passed by untouched. She remembered every microaggression that told her she didn't belong, even in rooms she'd earned her way into. She carried all of that with her, and when Henderson pulled her out of her car that night, he didn't just unleash his rage on a stranger. He cracked open a lifetime of wounds that Danielle had learned to carry in silence. But no more. The risk she took in exposing the truth came at a cost. The system tried to swallow her, tried to silence her with reassignment, wanted to erase her with bureaucratic red tape. But Danielle outsmarted them. She documented. She investigated. She built case files when no one was watching. And when she finally returned to the courtroom with evidence, testimony, and proof, she didn't just win. She changed everything. Her investigation led to multiple terminations, reforms, and policy rewrites. What began with one officer's cruelty became a reckoning across state lines. Danielle didn't just survive racism. She dragged it into the light. And still, she remained humble, choosing to amplify the voices of others rather than elevate herself. But make no mistake, what she did was extraordinary. And now that you know the truth, all of it, you can see the cost she carried and the courage it took to fight back. From the moment Henderson decided she wasn't human enough for courtesy, to the nights she drove with eyes in every mirror, to the moment she stood alone at that podium with the world watching, Danielle Brooks risked everything to ensure no one else had to suffer in silence again. So if you've been following her journey, if you've felt the pain, the injustice, the fire in her story, press the like button right now. Let her know you heard her. Let her know her voice didn't vanish. Let her know you're still standing with her in the fight. Leave a comment below. Say, "We believe in you, Danielle." Say, "Thank you for your courage." Danielle didn't just tell a story. She told our story. She didn't just survive injustice. She turned it into justice. And her fight, her journey, her sacrifice, it matters. Now. Always. Forever. Danielle Brooks walked through the marble corridors of Capitol Hill, her heels echoing off the walls, and a folder was clutched tightly in her hand. Inside that folder were names. Not just documents, names. Black men, brown women, teenagers, fathers, mothers, all of them were wrongfully targeted, harassed, arrested, and in some cases, buried under silence. Their stories had become her mission. And this morning, she wasn't just there as an FBI agent. She was there as their voice. It had been nearly a year since that stormy night when Officer Mark Henderson ripped her from her car. A year since he saw her skin before he saw her humanity. Since he tossed her dignity into the rain and forced her to prove her worth with a badge. But instead of disappearing into fear or shame, Danielle turned that trauma into fuel. She had spent the last 12 months gathering evidence, filing reports, connecting the dots they never wanted anyone to see. She had uncovered a web of abuse across states, departments, and political ranks. And now, she stood before a room full of lawmakers, lights glaring, cameras rolling. "This isn't just about one night," she said, her voice low but steady. "This is about every officer who acted without accountability. Every black woman had to carry fear in her purse and her license. Every family is still waiting for justice." One congressman leaned forward. "Agent Brooks, are you implying a federal pattern of racial profiling?" She didn't blink. "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating it clearly. We don't have an isolated problem. We have a culture of silence, and if we don't face it now, we'll keep burying names that deserved better." There was a pause, a silence so heavy it could crush the room. But Danielle had long learned how to breathe through silence. After the hearing, the praise was public, but the threats returned in private. Her inbox filled again. "Stay in your lane. You'll regret this. One day, no badge will save you." Her security detail was doubled. Her movements were restricted. At night, she sat in her apartment watching shadows dance outside her window. She lived with fear, but not regret. Because for every threat she received, a mother sent her a thank you letter. A student wrote, "You gave me courage for every insult." Danielle knew her fight wasn't just legal, but emotional, spiritual, and generational. But the system fought back harder. Her superior pulled her into a closed-door meeting. They offered her a promotion, but with conditions. Stop speaking publicly, step away from activism, focus on internal reform. It was polite to say, "Silence yourself and we'll reward you." Danielle smiled. "I didn't go through hell just to make it more comfortable for everyone else." She declined. That same week, her apartment was broken into again. Nothing was stolen, nothing damaged, but her folders were open. Her notebooks were flipped through. Her printer jammed with the words, "You talk too much." She sat on her couch for hours, staring at the page, heart racing. But instead of breaking down, she picked up her phone. She called 3 journalists, and then she went live. "To the world," she said, "you can scare me, you can follow me, but I won't stop. Because of the truth? The truth scares you more than you scare me." That video reached millions, and now she's speaking to you, right here, right now, through this story. If you've followed her from the beginning, from the moment she was profiled and pulled from her car, through the hearings, the threats, the testimonies, the betrayals, the fearless public calls for change, press the like button right now. Not because Danielle wants the spotlight, but because she deserves your support, because her courage is still burning in a world that keeps trying to snuff it out. Leave a comment below. Say, "We're still here, Danielle." Say, "You're not alone." Say, "Keep fighting." Because every time someone tries to silence her, your voice lifts her louder. And the louder she gets, the closer we all come to justice. Danielle Brooks is not just a name. She is a force. And she needs you with her now more than ever. Like, comment, share, support her truth. Because when she speaks for all of us. Not long after Danielle Brooks testified before Congress, she vanished from public view. No press, no statements, no social media. The world thought she'd gone quiet, maybe exhausted from the weight of it all. But the truth? Danielle hadn't vanished. She'd gone deeper. Underground. Not to hide, but to finish something she had started long before her name ever hit the news. She discovered something in one of her final investigations, buried in encrypted archives, hidden beneath layers of bureaucratic nonsense. A suppressed database of internal complaints from a multi-state task force that had quietly disbanded years ago. The files showed patterns, recurring names, suppressed evidence, reports rewritten, identities changed. Danielle wasn't looking at misconduct anymore. She was looking at a conspiracy. So she packed a duffel bag, grabbed a burner phone, and left. Over the next 3 months, Danielle traveled like a ghost. Her car had no GPS. She stayed in motels under fake names. She met with whistleblowers in truck stops and church basements. She pieced together the unthinkable. A coordinated network of officers and officials who had covered for each other across jurisdictions, transferring offenders from department to department with clean records and heavy secrets. Victims were paid off. Files were lost. In some cases, entire incidents were erased. Danielle found the missing pieces. In Detroit, she uncovered a sealed file involving a homeless veteran who'd vanished after a routine stop. In Louisiana, she interviewed a retired officer who admitted he'd been ordered to scrub footage from a jailhouse incident that left a man brain dead. In Arizona, a tech contractor handed her a hard drive filled with corrupted body cam footage he had been asked to destroy. But the deeper she went, the more dangerous it became. One night, on a remote road in Texas, her rental car's brakes were tampered with. She spun out and crashed into a ditch. She crawled out bleeding, heart racing, knowing it hadn't been an accident. The next day, she found a folded note wedged into her motel doorframe. "We warned you." Danielle didn't stop. She knew she couldn't bring this to the Bureau. Too many of the names she uncovered were tied to federal agencies. So she fed the information anonymously to trusted journalists, attorneys, and advocacy groups. They didn't know it was her. But the wave started anyway. Headlines began popping up. Old case reopened after new evidence. Fired officer implicated in cross-state network. Unseen body cam footage leaked. And still, she stayed hidden. Until one day, without warning, she returned. Danielle walked into a nationally televised town hall in Washington, D.C., went straight to the stage, and dropped a flash drive on the moderator's table. The contents? A full report, names unredacted, dates cross-referenced, footage restored. She exposed the entire network in real time, in front of millions. The room exploded. Gasps. Questions. Panic. Danielle didn't blink. "This is what you tried to bury," she said calmly. "But the truth never stays buried." Since that night, she's been a target again, but she's also become a legend. Some call her reckless, others call her a savior. But Danielle? She just calls herself a woman who couldn't stay quiet. She doesn't do interviews. She doesn't write memoirs. She keeps moving, always one step ahead, because she knows that justice isn't a destination, it's a fight. A long one, a painful one that takes everything you have. And now she needs you. If you've followed her story, from the moment she was profiled in the rain to the day she cracked open a conspiracy no one thought could be touched, comment right now. Say, "We stand with Danielle." Say, "Keep going." Press the like button if her story inspired you. Suppose her courage lit something in you. Her pain, fight, and unbelievable journey reminded you that one voice can change everything. Danielle Brooks is out there, still chasing truth and still dodging threats, Still lighting the match in every dark corner, they tried to keep hidden. And your voice? Your comment? It might just be the one that lets her know she's not doing it alone. Like, comment, share. Encourage her. Because Danielle didn't just write a report, she rewrote history. In the weeks following her explosive town hall reveal, Danielle Brooks didn't rest. She couldn't. The storm she had unleashed was unlike anything she'd faced before. Courtrooms reopened old cases. Lawmakers scrambled to distance themselves from names found in her files. But with every headline came more danger. Danielle moved from city to city with nothing but a backpack and encrypted drives, constantly watching her back. She received death threats not just by email, but also slid under hotel doors. Once, in a gas station parking lot, a man approached her car, stared into her windshield, and whispered, "You should have stayed quiet." She never stopped shaking that night. But she didn't run, because Danielle knew that silence is how injustice survives, and her voice had become a lifeline for the unheard. One night, alone in a motel outside Atlanta, she stared at the mirror, her reflection haunted by exhaustion and resolve. Her phone buzzed. Another message from a woman in tears. "They took my brother. No one believed me. But now, because of you, they reopened his case." Danielle pressed her hand to her chest, tears sliding silently down her face. Not out of fear, but for no purpose. This was why she kept going. She broke into sealed records. Not illegally, but through persistence, FOIA requests, public records, and survivor interviews. She pieced together what the system tried to erase. And when one network news anchor asked her why she risked everything, Danielle looked dead into the camera and said, "Because I was never fighting for myself. I was fighting for the next woman who gets pulled over and never makes it home." But the toll was brutal. She'd lost friends. Colleagues she once trusted now crossed the street when they saw her. The Bureau remained publicly silent, but privately distant. Danielle's badge had become both a shield and a scar. Yet she never let the world see her falter. Because someone, somewhere, was watching, waiting to see if she'd fall. She refused to give them that moment. Now she's reaching you. Yes, you. If you've followed her from that rainy roadside stop to the wild unraveling of secrets nationwide, press the like button right now. Let Danielle know her courage didn't vanish into silence. Her fire didn't just reach your screen. It ignited something within. That her pain wasn't just felt, it was heard. Leave a comment. Say, "We stand with Danielle." Say, "You inspire us." Because she's still in the fight, and she's not backing down, still lighting torches in the dark. And your voice, one comment, your one like, might be the spark that keeps her going when the world grows cold again. Danielle Brooks didn't just survive injustice, she broke it open. And she's not done yet. Danielle Brooks stood at the edge of the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool, her coat wrapped tightly around her shoulders, the early morning sun casting a golden hue across the calm water. It had been 2 years since that rainy night changed everything. 2 years since Officer Henderson yanked her from her car, treating her like a criminal because of the color of her skin. It has been 2 years since she decided that silence was no longer an option. And now, as the world slowly awakened behind her, Danielle breathed deeply. Not with fear, but with peace. She had survived the storm. Not unscathed, not unchanged, but unbroken. And in her wake, she had left behind a trail of light, truth, and voices once silenced finally being heard. Her work had sparked reform in places she never thought possible. Departments restructured, officers removed, policies rewritten, investigations launched by people who used to look the other way. Danielle had become a symbol, not because she sought fame, but because she chose truth when it cost her everything. And now, the truth was too loud to ignore. But what mattered most to her were the quiet victories. The boy in Detroit, who got to walk free after 3 years of wrongful detention. The single mother in Tennessee who received a public apology after years of being labeled a liar. The teenager in Baltimore who said, "I want to be like you," with tears in her eyes. Danielle carried those moments with her, not on headlines, but in her heart. And yet, through it all, she remained grounded. Because the lesson was clear. Change doesn't come easy. It comes through pain, courage, and standing when it's easier to sit. Danielle had once been a woman just trying to get home from work, and in seconds she became a face in a system that wanted to break her. But she didn't let it. She chose to speak up, to risk everything. And that choice didn't just change her, it changed lives. So what can we take from Danielle's story? That we all have a voice, and it matters. That silence is complicity, and truth, no matter how small, has the power to ripple. That justice isn't something we wait for. It's something we fight for. In our communities, in our conversations, in our everyday choices. Danielle's story reminds us that standing up for what's right might make you a target, but also a force. And when one person stands up, it permits others to do the same. So, if you've followed her story from the beginning, through the rain, the resistance, the investigations, the pain, the power, the risk, and now the resolution, please press the like button to let Danielle know that her journey mattered. Let her know you were with her through it all. Leave a comment below and say, "Thank you, Danielle." Say, "Your fight gave me hope." You changed the world. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story like this again. These stories aren't just entertainment. They're reflections, lessons, truths. They remind us of the world we live in and the world we can build together. Danielle Brooks didn't just survive injustice. She faced it head-on. She fought it with fire. And in the end, she won. Now it's your turn to carry the message forward. Like, comment, subscribe. Let her legacy live on, not just in memory, but in action.